So today we're going to deal with German expansion or German aggression in the 1930s up till 1938. In a couple days we'll finish the story leading up to World War II for Germany. We're going to start talking about the changing diplomatic positions of various European and America and the United States, European countries in the United States in the 1930s. And we'll start with Britain. And really, all of these countries, Britain, France, the United States, Germany, we're all dealing with a global Great Depression. So everybody is preoccupied and focused with their own economic problems. For Britain in particular, they not only have to deal with a global economic crisis, and Britain is a little worse off than some other European nations because they are an island. They rely so much on overseas trade that the Great Depression is going to hit them a little bit harder than it hit some other European countries. Britain is also dealing with concerns in East Asia. As we've got now conflict in East Asia, the Japanese have invaded Manchuria in 1931. There's a Chinese civil war raging in China, and Britain has got colonial holdings in East Asia that they have to be preoccupied with. We will also recall that with regard to German and British relations with each other, how did Britain feel about how harsh the Treaty of Versailles should be towards Germany from the beginning?
Not very harsh.
Yeah, it should be a little more lenient. We want to let Germany get back on their feet so we can trade with them. And that sentiment hasn't gone away. That sentiment hasn't gone away by the 1930s. More in Britain are supportive in the 30s of relieving some of the pressure that is on Germany. And we also have, and the story was same in Italy, and the story was same in Japan. In the 1930s, Britain is deeply concerned about a growing threat from international communism. That communism could spread throughout Europe and maybe even come to influence Britain. And their hope was, if there were a strong Germany in Central Europe, that new and strong Germany could be a buffer between Western Europe and the Soviet Union. That phrase, buffer, that means that something is between you and a possible threat. All right? So Germany could provide a buffer between Western Europe and the Soviet Union. So that's where Britain's coming into the story in the 1930s. Yeah?
Was it Poland and Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia already buffer states because they were set up?
They're there as well. But Britain, those countries are comparatively weak, certainly, and don't have anywhere near the population or industrial base that Germany would have. And those countries aren't as equipped to be a viable economic partner to Britain. For France, France's story is a little bit different, and it has been from the beginning. What kind of treaty did France want with Germany at the end of World War II? They wanted to break up Germany. They share a border with Germany. Germany had invaded France, both in 1870 and again in 1914. So France has got a different relationship with Germany. But France can't act on its own. France can't punish Germany on its own. And they tried this in 1923, and this is the Ruhr crisis we talked about last week, where Germany missed reparations payments. So a French army goes into Germany. And then the world looks down on France for doing that. You guys are being too rough on Germany. And so France had to put its tail between its legs and go back home. So while France would want to keep a Germany weak, they can't do it unilaterally. They can't do it on their own. They need partners in crime, partners to support them. But Britain has already made it clear that they're not in the beating down German game. So France is really on its own here. They also, like everybody else, are dealing with their own economic problems during the Depression. So what France has done instead is begun to foster what is known as the Little Entente. The Little Entente, this French word for agreement, entente, talked about the Triple Entente during World War I. After World War I, the Little Entente are new countries of Eastern Europe that have economic and military relationships with France. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Yugoslavia. These countries become what is known as the Little Entente. Countries that France will fund and put money into so they can build up a military, if it ever came to a conflict with Germany, would force Germany to fight that two-front war that they had to fight back in World War I. So this is what France is up to. France, still deeply concerned about Germany and Germans' intentions if they grew strong. For the United States, the story is very quick and simple. The Depression is crushing our economy. We are focused on internal matters. We are focused on domestic concerns, what's going on inside our own country. So we will remain isolationist with regards to foreign policy. You should know that word and be able to use that word, isolationism, for the United States. And we've got some other factors in the 1930s that will contribute to Germany becoming an aggressive state. Let me rattle through these really quickly. First, across the board, everybody's economic problems are having them look more internally to try to solve their internal economic situations before dealing with very expensive or problematic foreign relations. Everybody's looking inward rather than looking out, right? World War I is still fresh in Europeans' minds. World War I is still fresh in Europeans' minds. But remember, now we have, with a new German leadership, we have like 2 World War I's that are remembered. For France and for Belgium and for Britain, how do they remember World War I? A painful victory, but a painful victory. Something they would never want to relive again, right? They don't want another war. World War I is supposed to be the war that ends future wars. So no more war because war is so ugly. What is Adolf Hitler's memory of World War I? Backstab. Stab in the back theory. It was the November criminals betrayed the German military. Who were they defeated according to Adolf Hitler? No, they surrendered before the German army was ever pushed back into Germany. So this war was a war where lives were lost in vain, where the war was quit before it was truly over. So while you have a Britain and France that wants to avoid future conflict because they know how bad war is, you have a Germany, now with German leadership, recognizing that war is bad still, but feeling that they never lost World War I. So everything about the end of that war, the Treaty of Versailles, that should all be scrapped, right? We also had a Europe that in the 1920s and early 1930s was demilitarizing. Britain and France and other European nations saw comfort in the League of Nations. They saw comfort in the Kellogg-Briand Pact. Do we remember what the Kellogg-Briand Pact was?
War was illegal.
Yeah, the outlawing of war as a means to solve international disputes. Well, if you outlaw war, and if you are a member of a League of Nations that is going to work to solve international disputes before they turn into war, why would you fund a massive military? Especially at a time when your economy is in crisis. So we also have, in the early 1930s, countries beginning to move towards demilitarization, or even keeping up the demilitarization that they had begun before. What have we learned about the League of Nations by 1933?
Ineffective.
It's weak, it's ineffective. They left the Manchurians out to dry. The League of Nations has proven, at least with Japan to this point, that they're not willing to act in the face of aggressive powers. So now we move on to Adolf Hitler and the steps he will take to begin to violate the Treaty of Versailles and to begin to put his country in a position where they can start making moves against their neighbors. First, a meeting in 1933 called the Geneva Disarmament Conference. The title tells you everything you need to know. It was in Geneva, Switzerland, and it was meant to bring countries to further disarm their militaries. The League of Nations calls on the European countries and member states to only carry a defensive military. A military that is big enough and strong enough to defend your borders, but that is it. Not an offensive military, which would require much more offensive firepower and many more troops. France, however, is unwilling to really make many concessions. They don't want to demilitarize. Because if France demilitarizes, they still see a threat of Germany on their border. So this will be Adolf Hitler's first step into the international story. Adolf Hitler is in Geneva for this conference. He's the Chancellor of Germany at this point. And he offers a proposal that all of the nations of Europe, Britain and France included, should limit their militaries to the size and the scope of the current German military. Germany has been punished since the Treaty of Versailles with a 100,000-man army, no air force, no submarines. And has Germany gotten into war since 1920? No. In fact, when France invaded Germany in 1923 in the Ruhr crisis, how did Germany respond?
Passive resistance.
With passive resistance, not a military resistance. So Adolf Hitler's got a lot of evidence that having a very small, merely defensive military might contribute to a peaceful Europe. So Hitler says, for Germany. Now, and please recall, or for everybody, please recall that in 1933, nobody knows what Hitler's going to be doing in 34, 35, 36, 41, 44, whatever. No one has that knowledge, all right? When we see Adolf Hitler and we're like, that just kind of gives us a feeling that we don't like. They didn't have that in 1933. They didn't get to know the guy very well yet. So Hitler makes a proposal. And this looks like Hitler the peacemaker. Come down to our levels. Lower your military to our levels, and that will bring world peace. Now, Hitler's not stupid. He is evil. He's not necessarily stupid. He knows that this will be rebuffed. He knows that France will never lower their military to the size of Germany's military. And he knows that when he's rebuffed, he knows what he's going to do, right? He knows that he's going to then have cause to say, hey, I tried. I tried to bring everybody down to my level, and they didn't listen. They're the ones threatening Germany. And as they are threatening Germany, we are in every bit right. We are absolutely within our rights to start to rebuild our military to defend ourselves. I have given them an opportunity to come down to us. They refused. We must move up then to their level.
What if they accepted it?
I don't know why that's funny. That maybe would have been better. I don't know. Who knows? Had they accepted that? I don't know. Maybe who knows what it would have been. So anywho, at the Geneva Disarmament Conference, Hitler makes his proposal. His proposal is rebuffed. It's not responded to. France will never do it. So Hitler storms out of the conference, and Germany will pull out of the League of Nations. Germany will pull out of the League of Nations. This was what?
Was the Geneva Disarmament Conference like a total failure when nobody agreed to listen?
Pretty much, yeah. So Hitler pulls out of the conference. Germany backs out of the League of Nations. In response to this move, now Germany out of the League of Nations, no disarmament agreement made, Adolf Hitler will look to his east. And in 1934, and this surprises a lot of people don't know this was a thing. In 1934, Adolf Hitler and the Polish government to his east will sign a non-aggression pact. A non-aggression pact just means I won't attack you, you don't attack me. We will agree not to attack each other for any reasons, and this pact will last for 10 years. The year is 1934. This pact will last for 10 years. Now stop! You know the story already. You know that Adolf Hitler is going to violate this pact in 1939. He's going to invade Poland. But they don't know that in 1934. Yes?
Okay, so if the pacts are like so often violated by different countries, then why do any countries actually put any faith into them?
Well, they're going to stop putting as much faith in them going forward. But at this point, there's not a great history of these pacts being violated. This is like the beginning of these pacts being made. Yeah? I don't know who any of these people are. This is the picture that comes up when you Google the that's pretty much how I roll. I'm not putting, spoiler alert, there's not a lot of production time being put into this. My guess is that is a Polish, I don't know, Polish guys and German guys getting together. I don't know. I know who you're talking about, but I don't know. So, anyhow, we'll take a moment at the end of the class to figure out who those guys are. All right, we press on. So, a non-aggression pact with Poland. Here, what you're looking at with Poland, like, oh my gosh, Poland, why are you doing this? You know Germany might have beef because part of your country was created by taking away part of Poland, or part of your country was created by taking away a part of Germany, right? That Polish corridor. So why would Poland do this? Well, Poland knows what everybody else knows. What is the League of Nations worth? Not much of anything. Not much of anything. Can't stand but with the League of Nations because they didn't stand with the Manchurians. So why would they stand with the Poles? So they enter this pact with Germany. They enter this pact with Germany in hope of, hey, Germany might be an aggressive nation towards us. So if we sign a non-aggression pact with them, then we're cool. And we can all be safe. For Germany, this temporarily secures his eastern border. He knows he now doesn't have to worry about any kind of Polish attack against his country. And please don't be fooled. In 1934, if for whatever reason Poland and Germany were to have gotten into a military conflict, Poland would have won. Poland's military was far superior to German military in 1934 because Germany was kept down by the Treaty of Versailles. So this secures Germany's eastern border. And it also gives the impression that Adolf Hitler is a statesman. When you use this word statesman, we mean someone that can work with other nations on the international community. He's a leader of his nation, certainly, but he can be worked with on the international scale.
He's an open-minded person.
He's an open-minded person. And this is not a military alliance. This is a non-aggression pact. I won't attack you. You won't attack us. Now, I want to note, this is what we call a bilateral agreement. A bilateral agreement is an agreement between two parties, as opposed to a unilateral decision when someone decides to do something on their own, or a multilateral agreement where there's many countries involved. This is a bilateral agreement. Adolf Hitler, as we'll see through the next couple of days, is very fond of the bilateral agreement. Because bilateral agreements are way easier to break. If you break a multilateral agreement, you have angered 3 or 4 or 5 or more countries. If you break a bilateral treaty, you've really only upset one country. And Germany is much happier to make a bilateral agreement and later, as we'll see, to break a bilateral agreement. Because it doesn't necessarily bring anyone else against you. Hitler's own words, he said, all of our arrangements or all of our agreements with Poland have a temporary significance. He knows in 1934 that this agreement is not going to last a decade. But Poland doesn't know that, and no one else in the world knows that but Hitler. Okay? Cool. We press. 1934. 1934. We've already talked about this with Italy. I said I'd be rehashing a lot of this Italian stuff. In 1934, Nazis in Austria, the Nazi party in Austria, assassinates the Austrian Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss. Remember him, Dollfuss. D-O-L-L-F-U-S-S. This brings Mussolini some concern that Adolf Hitler is actually putting the wheels in motion to create a union between Austria and Germany. And what word are we going to use? Anschluss, for that union between Austria and Germany. So in response to this assassination of Dollfuss, Benito Mussolini will send 100,000 troops to his northern border. I'm sorry, guys. Talking is hard, especially at the end of the day. What did I say? Bubito. Anyway, Bonito. God. Keep on saying Bonito. I don't know where that's coming from. Benito. Thank you. I think I'm like squeezing together Mussolini and Benito, and I'm coming up with Benito Mussolini, whatever. Anyway, Mussolini's response is to send 100,000 men up to his northern border to defend and threaten possibly an invasion of Austria if Adolf Hitler continues to push for this union. Please recall that when Italy and Austria fought in World War I, it was 1 million Italians falling as casualties in combat with Austrians. So you don't have a whole lot of love between those in northern Italy especially and Austria. Adolf Hitler promises, I'm not here to annex Austria. No. And he backs down from any possible move to join with that country. In January of 1935, the 15-year duration of what was called the Tsar land, this industrially rich, coal-rich region of Germany, that according to the Treaty of Versailles, the coal of the Tsar would go over to France for 15 years. And at the end of 15 years, there would be a vote of the people, and that the people would decide whether the Tsar would remain German or French going forward. This is called the Tsar plebiscite. A plebiscite or plebiscite is a vote of the people. This goes back to like the Roman Republic and Roman Empire. The wealthy aristocrats in Rome were known as patricians. The people, regular people, were called plebeians or plebeians. So a vote of the people is called a plebiscite. In the United States, we don't have an aristocracy, a landed aristocracy, and the little people. So we don't have any word, we don't use the word plebiscite when we let people vote directly on an issue. What do we call it in the United States?
Referendum.
We call it a referendum in the United States, and we do them with every election. There's usually some kind of ballot referendum where we directly get to choose something like marijuana legalization or gay marriage or whatever else it might be in the state of Michigan. In the Tsar plebiscite in January 1935, the people of the Tsar voted overwhelmingly to go and be a part of the German nation. 90% of the vote went towards staying with Germany. For Adolf Hitler, this is what he could call a vote of confidence. That the people weren't just voting to be a part of Germany, they were voting to be a part of Hitler's Germany. He's got the people's support. This will be a boon to Hitler's propaganda, that the people support him. Germany will also, at this point, be actively rearming their military, rebuilding their military. Hitler felt absolutely justified because Britain and France wouldn't come down to German levels. And so now he could freely rearm. He is absolutely violating the Treaty of Versailles. But are Britain and France willing to go to war over that? No. And this is an important note, and everybody be hyper-focused to what I'm about to say. For Britain and France to go to war, they have to have a good and legitimate reason to do so. All right? That what we call casus belli, a reason for war. I would argue that Britain and France, or today's United States, has to be the most justified to go to war compared to other nations of the world, certainly like Italy or Germany or the Soviet Union that we'll talk. What's the difference here? Why do Britain and France have to have good and legitimate reasons to go to war compared to a country like Germany or Italy? Yeah.
Destabilize the entire economy.
Wars can destabilize an economy, sure. But what is the biggest difference between Britain and France and the United States and Soviet Union and Germany and Italy? Yeah.
They're viewed as like bad already, so like, it kind of seems like just something they would do, whereas
Like they're the villains in the story?
like I feel like people would expect like Britain and France to like take
They have to have a moral high ground that they have to maintain? Maybe. Anybody else an idea? The hint is the United States, Great Britain, and France compared to Soviet Union, Italy, and Germany. Yes. That's what you were going to say, though, right? But you were so much more respectful to attempt to raise your hand, unlike these hoodlums over here. All right. If you are a democracy, you have to answer to your population. So if you're a democratic state, you've got to make sure the people would support going to war. Because it's the people who would be sending their sons off to fight and die in one of these wars. So you better be going for a good cause that your people would support. All right? Germany starts to rebuild its military. Britain has long supported Germany's ability to get back on its feet. They don't care about a bigger German army. What is that German army going to do? Like walk across the English Channel? The North Sea? No. So they could fly there. We'll learn that pretty soon. So Britain's not really worried about that. And if Britain is not going to go to war because Germany starts rearming, is France going to do it on their own? No. We've already proven that France won't act on their own. So Germany starts rearming their military. By 1935, the German army will jump from about 7 to 21 divisions. A division is about 15,000 guys. So this is when they go from about their 100,000-man army, give or take, to triple that size. And over the next few years, they will triple again, and again, and again. All right, they're going to get larger and larger. To the point, and I've already mentioned this, but in 1941, in June of 1941, you don't need to write it down now, you will later. In June of 1941, when the Nazis invade the Soviet Union, they will have an invasion force that is nearly 4 million strong, moving into, compared to the 100,000-man army they had 6 years before.
Was that just the army? When you say rearm, do you mean like the actual army or like this paramilitary forces they have, like the SA or the SS?
No, this is the army. This is the Wehrmacht, the German army. They will also reveal the existence of an air force. The Germans had long been building an air force. Much of the construction of a German air force was done in Russia. Agreements in the 1920s between Germany and Russia allowed them to start to rebuild and train an air force in Russia. And so in 1935, it will be revealed that the German Luftwaffe, which was forbidden, the Luftwaffe is Air Force, which was forbidden according to the Treaty of Versailles, had 2,500 planes. But yet Britain and France will do nothing. In March of 1936, the Rhineland region of Germany, that's that western border of Germany with Belgium and France, the Rhineland region of Germany. What did the Treaty of Versailles say about the Rhineland? No army in the Rhineland. It's got to be a demilitarized Rhineland. In 1936, in March of 1936, Adolf Hitler absolutely rolls the dice because he doesn't know what France's reaction is going to be. But he rolls the dice. His generals say, no, don't do this. If we provoke the French, what can the French do to us in March of 1936? They can destroy us. We are not ready to fight a war against France. Don't do it. For the first of many occasions where Adolf Hitler will refuse to listen to his military advisors, he sends his army into the Rhineland. And Hitler was right. France does nothing. Britain does nothing. The Rhineland is remilitarized. Again, though, France is a democracy. They've got to have a good cause to go to war. What did Germany really do? Yes, they violated the Treaty of Versailles. But that's already been violated with rebuilding their military. Okay, well, they are rearming a border of France. They're putting soldiers right across the border of France. True, but really all they're doing is moving German troops from one part of Germany to another part of Germany. So are we going to convince the French to go to war with Germany because German troops moved inside of Germany? That doesn't seem like a good cause for war. No opposition then occurs. Yeah? We're on our own. We've got an Atlantic Ocean that keeps us from having to worry about anything. So we don't have to worry about anything. We talked about this last week with Italy. Spanish Civil War. Germany will enter the Spanish Civil War. Not to the extent that the Italians do. Said last week that the Italians sent 70,000 soldiers into Spain to fight for the nationalists in Spain. Germany will send its what's called the Condor Legion of their Air Force. And this will be a trial run. This will be like a proving ground for these new German airplanes. You guys might have seen this image before, this painting before. This is Pablo Picasso's Guernica. And this is Picasso's view of this city that was bombed by the German Condor Legion and the chaos and the tragedy and the death and destruction that would result following the bombing of this city. So German bombing was devastating. But Adolf Hitler absolutely learned the effectiveness of his modern Air Force in a new and modern war. The hope for Germany from joining into the Spanish Civil War is that he will have a friendly government in Spain that will pay Germany back by letting them set up submarine bases in Spain. This would give Germany footing on the Mediterranean Sea. Germany is also going to have some new diplomatic arrangements. In 1936, this is following Benito Mussolini's invasion of Abyssinia. In 1936, Germany and Italy, Mussolini and Hitler, will sign what's called the Rome-Berlin Axis, where they will establish common areas of mutual what word I'm looking for? Mutual interest between them. Like areas economically and military where their interests align with each other. This is the first alliance between Italy and Germany, and 1936. And this is why we call those countries that we fight in the Second World War the Axis powers. It starts with the Rome-Berlin Axis. And then Japan, it makes for a weird axis. Japan will come along later with the Tripartite Pact. In 1937, there is the first of the agreements between Italy and Germany and Japan called the Anti-Comintern Pact. Comintern is a combination of Communist International. And this was the organization of the Soviet Union that moved to support communist movements in other countries. So Germany and Italy and Japan signed the Anti-Comintern Pact in hopes of stopping the spread of communism that they all felt threatened by. It also established a principle of mutual defense if they were attacked by a communist nation. So if the Soviet Union attacked Japan, then Germany and Italy and Japan would all be in alliance with each other. And the last note for today is coming from a meeting held in November of 1937 between Adolf Hitler and his top generals and ministers. And the notes of that meeting were written by an officer named Hossbach. And it became known as the Hossbach Memorandum. And out of these minutes from this meeting, out of these notes from this meeting, some of the early ideas of Adolf Hitler that were more abstractly put in his Mein Kampf, his book Mein Kampf, some of those ideas were more abstract. Now they are more concrete. That Germany moves to create a greater Germany of German-speaking people. And that the acquisition by force of Lebensraum is essential for those German people. Remember Lebensraum, the living space that the 85 million Germans, once united, will need in order to feed themselves. Now, this is early. Adolf Hitler had only been rebuilding a military for the last couple years. He's not ready for prime time, and some of his generals let him know, we're not here yet. We are not prepared to fight this fight. Some of his generals said it wouldn't be until 1941-42 that we could be prepared to fight an aggressive war. And as you guys probably already know, this war is going to start in 1939. So in response to some of his generals challenging Adolf Hitler's plans, by February of 1938, Hitler will sack those generals, remove those generals, and proclaim himself the supreme commander of the German army. The supreme commander of the German army.
Is it Night of the Long Knives?
This is not the Night of the Long Knives. That was at the beginning of Adolf Hitler's reign, where he removed Nazi party members that might challenge Adolf Hitler's position. I don't have an actual name for this sacking of these generals that challenged Hitler's authority and plans. But what are you left with when you are a military that has all of its leaders that challenged Hitler removed? And when we say removed, these guys are being thrown in prison camps or executed. What are you left with in your military? A bunch of yes men. People that will go with whatever Adolf Hitler would suggest. Yes?
Did he also make everybody in the military take the Hitler oath?
And I don't know what time frame that is going to come, but yes, that's absolutely everybody throughout the state. Questions, comments, concerns?